Jack Hall, a paleoclimatologist, is on a mission in Antarctica with his colleagues, Frank and Jason, collecting ice core samples on the Larsen ice shelf for the NOAA. Suddenly, the ice shelf breaks away from the continent, nearly causing Jack to fall to his death. Following the incident, Jack presents his research on global warming at a United Nations conference in New Delhi, explaining that a similar event 10,000 years ago triggered an ice age. He warns that a similar climate catastrophe could occur within the next 100 to 1,000 years if humanity doesn't curb pollution. However, many diplomats, including the US Vice President, are skeptical of his predictions. During the conference, Jack meets Professor Terry Rapson from the Headland Climate Research Centre in Scotland. Rapson explains that the polar ice caps melting has disrupted the salt balance in the oceans, leading to a 13-degree drop in ocean current temperatures. Two buoys in the North Atlantic register a significant drop in ocean temperature at the same time, leading Rapson to conclude that the melting polar ice is disrupting the North Atlantic current. Alarmed, he contacts Jack, whose paleoclimatological model contains reconstructed data from the climate shift that triggered the first ice age. Although Jack initially believed such events were centuries away, he joins forces with Frank, Jason, and NASA meteorologist Janet Toccata to build a new forecast model using data from Rapson and Toccata. Together, they aim to predict the potential consequences of this rapidly changing climate system. Across the globe, extreme weather events are wreaking havoc. In Tokyo, hailstones the size of softballs rain down, while New Delhi experiences a rare snowfall. Meanwhile, Los Angeles is devastated by a simultaneous onslaught of enormous F5 tornadoes. In response to the severe atmospheric turbulence, the US President orders the FAA to ground all air traffic over the country. In Scotland, 3 RAF helicopters dispatched to evacuate the British royal family from Balmoral Castle fly directly into the eye of an immense hurricane-like superstorm. The storm's plummeting temperatures, dropping to -150 degrees Fahrenheit, freeze the helicopter's fuel lines and rotors, causing them to crash, with the crew quickly succumbing to the deadly cold. Meanwhile, Jack's son, Sam, is in New York City for an academic competition with his friends Brian and Laura. During the event, they befriend a fellow student named JD. As the competition progresses, the weather takes a drastic turn, with violent winds and torrential rain battering the city. Sam calls his father, promising to catch the next train home. However, the worsening storm soon forces the shutdown of public transit, including the subways and Grand Central Station, as severe flooding overtakes the city, trapping Sam and his friends in New York. Jack urgently meets with the president, delivering the grim news that his previous timeline of years has now shrunk to mere days before the Earth plunges into a new ice age. He strongly advises the president to evacuate everyone in the southern states to Mexico, as it is too late to rescue those in the north. The vice president dismisses Jack's warnings as exaggerated, but Jack, undeterred, sets off for New York to find his son. As the storm worsens over Manhattan, a massive storm surge nearly 40 feet high, about half the height of the Statue of Liberty, slams into the island, leading to widespread flooding. Sam and his friends manage to seek refuge in the New York Public Library. While heading to safety, Laura injures her leg on a piece of jagged metal attached to a taxi. Despite her injury, she helps a woman and her children escape from the rapidly flooding vehicle. As the superstorm worsens, survivors in the northern United States are forced to flee south. Many Americans, in desperation, begin crossing the border into Mexico illegally. Determined to reach his son in Manhattan, Jack embarks on a perilous journey, accompanied by Frank and Jason. Along the way, their truck crashes into a snow-covered tractor trailer outside Philadelphia, forcing them to continue on foot using snowshoes. During their trek, tragedy strikes when Frank falls through the glass roof of a snow-covered mall. As Jack and Jason attempt to pull him to safety, the fragile glass beneath them begins to shatter. In a heartbreaking moment, Frank selflessly cuts the rope, sacrificing himself to save his friends. Meanwhile, the US president's helicopter is overtaken by the superstorm, resulting in the death of everyone on board. With the president gone, the vice president assumes leadership. Faced with a massive humanitarian crisis at the border, where countless Americans are seeking refuge, the VP negotiates with the Mexican government, agreeing to forgive a substantial portion of their debt in exchange for allowing the people to cross into Mexico for safety. Inside the New York Public Library, Sam urges the remaining survivors to follow his father's advice and stay indoors. While many ignore him and leave, the small group that stays behind burns books for warmth and raids a vending machine for food. Laura's condition worsens when her injury becomes infected, leading to blood poisoning. In a desperate attempt to save her, Sam, Brian, and JD venture out to find penicillin in a Russian cargo ship that has drifted into the city. During their mission, they are attacked by wolves that have escaped from the New York Zoo. Just as they retrieve the medicine, the eye of the superstorm passes over the city, bringing -150°F temperatures that freeze everything in sight, including the New York City skyline. The trio makes it back to the library with the necessary supplies, narrowly escaping the deadly freeze. Meanwhile, Jack and Jason seek refuge in an abandoned Wendy's restaurant as they journey to find Sam. Jason collapses from exposure to the brutal cold, and in a desperate act, Jack lowers him into the kitchen through a vent and waits for the storm's eye to pass. Once the worst is over, they continue toward New York. Upon arrival, they find the library buried under snow but are relieved to discover Sam and his group alive. U.S. Army helicopters, piloting UH-60 Blackhawks, arrive to rescue them. In Mexico, the newly inaugurated president dispatches search and rescue teams to locate more survivors, inspired by Sam's group's survival. Additional survivors are discovered atop Manhattan's skyscrapers and are also rescued. The film ends with astronauts aboard the International Space Station looking down at Earth, revealing that much of the Northern Hemisphere, including the majority of the United States, is now blanketed in ice, while pollution levels have significantly dropped. Thank you everyone for watching.